Let's talk about correcting others. Sometimes it just has to happen. And when it comes to correcting others, we can be all over the map. We can do it harshly. That's not the way that we want to do it. Sometimes we choose to correct others behind their backs. We're actually gossiping and slandering, and we're not correcting them at all. And then there are some folks who cave to their insecurities. We call it fear of man. They dare not bring up the tough conversation. Now, perhaps you shouldn't bring up the tough conversation. Maybe you shouldn't correct them at all. But if you choose to correct someone, it is important that we do it the right way. In this podcast, I want to give you some sequential steps for correcting others when you have to. Thanks for watching. Hello everyone, Rick Thomas here. We're helping people live effective lives. This video is about the sequential and vital steps when correcting other people. I want to give you a process to think through how to bring correction when you're in that moment where you really believe you need to say something to someone. Well, we want to do it well. We want to do it biblically. And I trust what I'm going to share with you will benefit you as you think about stepping into those crucial moments when you're serving those who need your assistance. And so here are 10 sequential steps when correcting other people. Step number 1, start in your closet. Always asking the Lord to give you a divine perspective on the person that you are correcting. You don't want to start horizontally saying something. That is the ready, fire, aim method that can lead to impulsivity and a lack of self-control. One of the best ways to exercise self-control when you need to say something that is difficult to say to a person is to start vertically, not horizontally. And one of the things that you want to ask the Lord to do for you is to give you a divine perspective on that person. And so step number 1, start in your closet vertically, asking the Lord to give you a divine perspective. Now, what I mean by divine perspective is one of the ways that you can think about it is if you are correcting a person that you believe is a Christian, then you are correcting God's child. Sometime in the past, God chose to regenerate that person, to make them be born again. And so in essence, you are correcting a child of God. Maybe you can think of it like you have a best friend and you want to correct their child. Think about it that way, that you want to correct someone that you love very much. You love this person, and you want to correct their child. Well, it's very similar in the community of faith. The people that we are correcting are God's children, and so we want to keep Him in mind as we correct His children. Now, maybe you're correcting someone who is not God's child. Well, they are made in the image of God, and James talked about this in James chapter 3. He says we bless God and we curse those who are made in the image of God. James is trying to give us that divine perspective. These people may not be believers, but they are made in God's image. And so step number 1, when correcting someone, start in your closet, asking the Lord to give you that divine perspective. Step number 2, address your motives. Are your motives redemptive or are they punitive? Too often when we see something that we don't like, we hear something that we don't like, we can be impulsive and we can say the wrong thing. And really what we said, well, it comes from a heart that is not thinking about building up the other person, what Paul talked about in Ephesians 4:24. And so we want to make sure that our speech is always edifying. It is always building up. It is not deteriorating. It is not corrupting the other person. And so step number 2, are your motives, are they redemptive? Are they punitive? Are you trying to punish the other person? Step number 3, ask the Lord to give you divine affection for the person that you are correcting. If you don't have affection for the person that you are correcting, well, they will probably feel your lack of affection when you bring that correction to them. Now, one of the ways that you can have divine affection for someone is to go back to point number 1 by having a divine perspective. If you realize that this person is God's child, assuming that they are, or that this person is made in the image of God, which they definitely are, well then, on a very minimal level, you can have that kind of affection for the person. And so you want to ask the Lord to give you at least a minimal amount of divine affection for the person that you are correcting, point number 3. And then number 4, in these sequential steps to correcting someone, address your frustrations that you have with the person. The way that you do that is, think about this. You put Christ on the cross. One of the most effective ways that can help me to think rightly about any frustration that I have with any person, whether it's my spouse or my children, my neighbor, my friends, church people, or maybe people that I don't even know, but people that I interact with on social media. I want to address the frustrations that I have with them, and one of the most powerful, potent ways to address your frustration with someone is to remember this: you put Christ on the cross. When you realize that the greatest act perpetrated against any person was the crushing of Christ on the cross, and you and I are guilty in putting Him there, then there is no place for self-righteous corrections. We are not looking down on other people, because truly all the ground is level around the cross, and the more that we are cross-centered, as we are aware that we put Christ on the cross, it tends to mitigate and to remove the frustrations that we have toward others. And so point number 4 is address your frustrations, and the way that you do that is by recognizing that you and I, we put Christ on the cross. Step number 5, remember that you are fallible. Only imperfect people can correct imperfect people. Therefore, we want to proceed with caution. Now, this goes both ways. Only imperfect people that can correct imperfect people. And for those of us who receive the corrections of others, well, they are imperfect people who are correcting us. And so the best kind of correction that we could ever receive is from an imperfect person. The point is that nobody will correct us perfectly. And so we not only want to remember that we are fallible, that we will do it imperfectly, but we also want to recognize, if we're on the receiving end, that the corrector is fallible. They will do it imperfectly. I'm not making a justification for imperfect soul care, but I think it's important for us to understand that if we elevate the level of soul care, that only perfect people can do it and they have to do it perfectly, well, we're going to be disappointed every time. Only imperfect people can correct imperfect people. Step number 6, remember that you're working with incomplete information. We are not omniscient. And therefore, when you enter into a situation where you are correcting an individual, you will not have all the data that you wished you had. And so that should govern our hearts as we move into this corrective opportunity with a heart of humility, knowing that we don't have all the data that we should have. And not only that, it should encourage and motivate us to ask more questions rather than making statements. Some people in their corrective care, they are statement makers, not question askers. But if you are aware that you're operating with incomplete data, you are going to ask more questions than make statements. Step number 6. Number 7, do not cave to the fear of others. This is a big deal. We live in a bully culture. We live in this culture, this climate, this atmosphere where people are always lecturing us and bullying us. And if you listen to that too much, And by the way, I recommend that you not listen to that too much, where people are always telling you how awful you are and that you're wrong and that your views are wrong. After a while, you can self-censor yourself and you will not speak into situations where you should be talking into them. And so number 7, do not cave to the fear of others. Number 8, ask the other person how your correction felt to them. Perhaps you were harsh. Maybe you did not work out all your frustrations. Maybe you don't have a divine perspective on that individual. There have been many times in counseling where at the end of the counseling session, I have asked my counselees, did I come across too strong? Did I come across too harsh? Did I seem unkind to you? It's okay. Remember, only imperfect people can correct imperfect people, and therefore there will be times that you will do it imperfectly. And so one of the best things that you can ask is, well, how did my correction feel to you? Did it feel redemptive or did it feel punitive? By the way, parents, you can do this with your children, spouses. You should be doing this with each other. After the dust settles, after you work through the conflict, you come back and walk through what exactly happened when you can talk in a civil way. Maybe one of the questions that you want to ask, one of the diagnoses that you want to make is, well, how did it feel when I said what I said to you? Number 9, give them a plan to change. Don't just hit and run with your corrections. Don't be a fly-by shooter. Those are the people that live on Facebook and other social media platforms. Don't be that person. If you're going to correct them, that's just the put off aspect of what you're saying. Well, give them something to put on. Help them to renew their mind. Give them a plan for change. That's number 9. And then finally, number 10, follow up the next day to see how you can continue to serve them. Your corrective care is serving them. And sometimes after you have one of these tense conversations, there can be some uncomfortableness. Maybe 30 minutes later, a few hours later, or the next day. One of the most effective things that you can do is give them a call, or if you are in context where you can meet them, or maybe shoot them an email, but it would be better to have some kind of voice-to-voice or face-to-face conversation. But have that conversation with them the next day or two, pretty soon after, 24 to 48 hours after. Just follow up, because sometimes, people can say, well, under the moment, the heat of the moment, or during the time that we're having this conflict, we were working through something, I didn't think about this, and now I have thought about this, and I would like to have that ability and that place to be able to talk to you about this additional thing that I didn't think about when you were correcting me. These follow-up moments can be some of the most redemptive moments, and it can really get the wrinkles out of the conflict that you had. And so this is 10 vital sequential steps when you are correcting others. I do have an episode on our website. It's episode 276 under the Life Over Coffee series. You can watch that episode, and then inside those show notes is a link to more articles and podcasts that will help you in this idea of conflict resolution. If we can help you, if you would like to chat with us, please let us know. You can get on our free community forums, and we would love to serve you. Thank you so much for watching the video.